that the Egyptians heard it and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Can you imagine? They have no idea what's going on. Stuff keeps showing up in their bag. Their little brother's about to be kept here. Daddy's gonna die, like literally. We go home without Benjamin, he's gonna die. And now he says, hey, guys, it's me, Joseph. Is my father alive? And they can't even answer. They can't even speak. Verse 4. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Can you imagine? Now they're like, okay, Dad probably will die, but we're gonna die first. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. And here it is. God sent me before you so that he could show you what happens when you're faithful. No. God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Joseph says, God sent me here to save you. But it's more specific than that. Seed, land, covenant. The fall happens in chapter 3. And then there's a covenant promise. And the covenant promise comes in the form of a curse. This curse of the serpent. I will put enmity between you and the woman and between your seed and her seed. You're gonna bruise his heel, he's gonna bruise your head. God makes this promise that there is one coming who is going to undo this curse. Next chapter is the first murder. The seed of the serpent, Cain, kills the seed of the woman, Abel. Why do I say that Cain is the seed of the serpent? Because John says so in John chapter 3, verse 12. Do not be like Cain, who was of the evil one. Well, now we got a problem because the promised seed has been murdered. That's all right. Right after that, we're introduced to Seth. And then in chapter 5, there are 10 generations between Adam and Noah through the godly line of Seth. The promised seed has been preserved. Now Noah has 3 sons, but only one can be the promised seed. And eventually we find out that it is Shem who's the promised seed. Eventually we come to Abram, who is the promised seed. And then Abram has 2 sons, but only one of them can be the promised seed. Interestingly enough, his wife is beyond the seed-bearing years, but miraculously, he still gets the promised seed. And so Isaac is the promised seed. And then all of a sudden, with Isaac, there are twins who come. Which one is going to be the promised seed? Is it the firstborn? No, it's not. It's the one who comes after him who's the promised seed. And so it's not Esau, it's Jacob. And now with Jacob, there are 12 sons. Which one of these sons is the promised seed? Well, we don't know. And it seems like the story focuses on Joseph. So you might think, actually, it's Joseph who's the promised seed. But he's not. Joseph is just there to preserve the promised seed. But who's the promised seed? Well, the promised seed identifies himself just before Joseph identifies himself to his brothers. And interestingly enough, the way the promised seed identifies himself is very telling as to why he's the promised seed. Benjamin is about to be kept behind, and Judah, the promised seed, says to Joseph, it'll kill my father. So in essence, Judah, the promised seed, offers himself as a substitute in the place of the one whom his father loves, which is exactly what the promised seed would do. Just like another promised seed, but don't run too fast, because Judah has another son who identifies himself as a promised seed. You see, Judah's greater son, David, actually identifies himself as the promised seed one day when in the valley there is a giant who is challenging Israel and says, "Send me a man to fight with me. This is a battle of champions. I will represent my people. You send me someone who will represent your people." And so King David, before he's King David, goes down into the valley to face Israel's enemy as Israel's covenant representative. And while he's in the valley, he defeats Israel's enemy on behalf of all of Israel, which means that Israel is victorious because all of Israel is in him, the promised seed, when he wins this victory. And then there is a greater David who identifies himself as the promised seed to which all the other promised seeds point. And he does what Judah and what David did all in one fell swoop. He also offers himself as a substitutionary atoning sacrifice for the sons whom his father loves. And then, through dying a death that they deserved, goes into that great valley and defeats the enemy on behalf of all of those who are in him by faith. You see, Joseph didn't go to Egypt so that we could tell our children, "Be faithful and you'll be rich and famous." Joseph went to Egypt so that Judah, the promised seed, wouldn't starve, so that David, the promised seed, could be born, so that Jesus, the promised seed, could save his people.